Hey everybody, so today I'm doing a review of a release I have been so excited for, and I've waited a really long time, as some of you know. I was putting in the push for it like within the last several years. And finally it is here, and that is indeed the new 4K release of one of my favorites, Fright Night. So first up, it does come in the Steelbook. It's currently the only version that you can get. I assume standard release will probably come out down the line in like a regular case. But I absolutely love the Steelbook because of course it uses the original poster artwork on the front, which I will show for you real quick. So there's the front of the Steelbook, and there's the side with the title, and there's the back with that great image of Jerry Dandridge. And here's the part that comes off that has, you know, some of the basic information of it. So aside from the Steelbook, let's open this up real quick, and as you can tell, it has 3 discs. It's got the 4K disc, which pretty much only just has the feature film on it, and then it has the Blu-ray that has the film as well as a bunch of the special features, and then an extra Blu-ray that has a bunch of special features on it as well. So very, very nice. Again, I'm glad that they did use the original poster artwork on it. It does make me happy. And I do want to mention that it does come with a Movies Anywhere digital code. As I mentioned before, this is actually one of my favorite horror films, but it's also probably my favorite vampire film. I'm not saying it's the best vampire film. I'm only saying it's one of my favorites. It's the one I kind of grew up watching like a ton as a kid. So whenever someone mentions a vampire movie, like this is the first one that actually comes to mind. And for those of you who haven't seen it, just real quick, it's sort of, it's got a little bit of a takeoff on Rear Window in the fact that you have Charlie, our main character, who's a high school kid who has a new neighbor that moves into the creepy house next door. And while spying in the window one night, he sees that his neighbor is indeed a vampire, and he tries to convince everyone, including his girlfriend and his best friend, that this guy's a vampire. And what's cool about it is that he actually seeks out a horror TV host played by Roddy McDowall and tries to convince him that it's like, well, you know, you kill vampires in the movies, you know, and it's like, I have a real one and he should help take care of this one with me. So the thing I've always loved about Fright Night is that it has like a really good sense of humor, but the horror elements are taken seriously. So it's a perfect blend of like horror and comedy, but they don't detract from one another, which is why, you know, it's really hard to do. And I think it's one of the reasons why too I've always absolutely loved this film. And it's really well written. It's written by Tom Holland, who he wrote Psycho 2, but he also directed Child's Play. I mean, he's such a great writer and stuff, and very talented director, as is the case here. So getting to the technical merits then of this release. So the main thing is, I think the Blu-ray is pretty much, I don't have the previous Blu-ray release that Sony put out a couple years ago to compare, so I assume it's more or less the same disc. Now I think the extras disc, I think that's the new one because it does actually have some new interviews on it, and then the 4K disc pretty much just has the movie. Now as far as technical aspects go, it has a 4K transfer from the original camera negative. It's HDR and Dolby Vision, and as far as the picture goes, like I think it looks absolutely amazing. If I had to just nitpick anything, I would say maybe some of the blue could be a little bit more blue, you know, if that's the thing, but it's like, it's so subtle, and even then, like, I'm not even sure like it technically needs to be, so I don't want to fault the transfer for that at all, because otherwise it's a fantastic transfer. It's very clean, but it's not scrubbed, you know, there's not any noise reduction applied or anything, so you know the grain is there. It's very fine, as is the case in a proper transfer, and detail is there, even though this is a anamorphic film. So those of you who don't know, it's shot on 35mm film. It is full widescreen, and in order to pull that off, you know, you use an anamorphic lens, which basically takes that wide image, sort of squishes it down to fit on the 35mm film frame. And then to project it properly, you put an anamorphic lens in on top of the projector, which then unstretches it, and that's how you get the widescreen. So sometimes in that process, it can lead to a slightly softer image compared to a non-anamorphic film. But honestly, like, I didn't really see anything here that kind of stood out in that regard. And I didn't see any like weird compression anomalies or anything like that. I mean, it's like, if they're there, they're so minor, I didn't even see them. All right, I'm going to put this down just for a moment, so I'm not holding it the whole time. Now we get to the audio. And so this is the thing that Sony does better than any other studio. I'm not talking about like the smaller labels that license stuff. I'm talking about like the big, you know, the big studios. Pretty much all the other studios most of the time kind of fall flat in the fact that like they can offer like a new audio mix, which again, I'm totally for. Dolby Atmos mix or DTS-X mix or something along those lines, but always include the original theatrical audio mix. And then you have to do that for two reasons. One, just for archival reasons, the original mix should always have a proper archival edition, and it should also be included on every release. Like, this should be standard, and the fact that it's not, especially from a lot of these other companies, is kind of shocking. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, you're not losing anything by including one more track on the film, or on the disc rather. And what Sony does, and I believe they do this in pretty much all of their releases, they include, they'll have remixes, but they always include the original audio mix. And this is the case here. So, you have a couple other languages as well, and there are some commentary tracks, but the main, as far as English goes anyway, you have a brand new Dolby Atmos track, which is great, the 5.1 surround mix, which has been around for a little bit, as well as the original 2.0 stereo mix, which is the original theatrical mix. So you have all your options, and that is fantastic. And again, that should be standard, but it's not. That's a whole other video I'll make as to why audio is such an important thing. And I will say that the restoration on these things just sounds really great. Such a good mix on all three. Obviously, the original theatrical mix sounds good. The 5.1, which has been around for a while, sounds really good. The Atmos track sounds fantastic. Now, I do have to say, just before I praise it too much, there's one minor error on the Atmos track. I'm not going to fault it too much because even I didn't notice it. Now, that doesn't mean it shouldn't be there. It should not have any errors on it, but I do have to mention it, is for those of you who know the film well, I'm not going to spoil anything, but in the club scene, one of the songs that plays in the Atmos track, you don't really hear any of the singing. You only hear the music of that track, but you don't actually hear any of the words being sung. But it's funny because if you switch over to the 5.1 or the original theatrical mix, it's there. You hear it. It's just not in the Atmos track, right? It's there, but it's so soft that you can barely hear it. And the thing is, I didn't even notice it at first because the scene going on, it actually technically kind of works actually with just the music without, the lyrics and everything, but still, the original version has the lyrics. I don't know why it's not there. It's obviously not a licensing issue or anything like that. It's literally, I think, just an error on the mix. Other than that, the Atmos track, if it wasn't for that one thing, this would actually be perfect, but I do have to mention that error, because otherwise this Atmos track is actually amazing. It's like a lot of these releases can get Atmos remixes, and it's it's nice, it's maybe a little bit fuller sound and everything, but very infrequently, at least for me, I don't often notice some massive Atmos effect. Except this is one of the few times I did. So again, not spoiling anything, but for those of you who know the film, early on in the film when Jerry Dandridge sort of lands on Charlie's house and you hear the footsteps as he's walking around the roof, those footsteps actually came from above. It was so cool. I was like, oh my God, that's so awesome. That was such a cool effect. It's one of those oh yeah, that's why I paid the extra money for, a Dolby Atmos system. So that was really fun. Again, outside of the one minor thing with the song, it's such a great mix on it. And as far as the extras go, it ports over, I believe, pretty much all the extras from the previous release, has some new ones, have some new interviews on it. Again, a couple commentary tracks. This thing is just loaded with stuff. Again, it's, 3 discs, and it just has so much on it. And it's kind of one of those where, I don't know what else you could even throw into it. Because, honestly, between all the interviews, the commentary tracks, and it comes with the You're So Cool, Brewster documentary on the making of Fright Night. Now, it is the abridged version. For those of you who don't know, it's a documentary that came out a couple years ago that covers the entire Fright Night franchise, pretty much. So it goes, obviously, the original film, which is the majority of it, and then it goes into Fright Night 2, and then it goes a little bit into the remake. But the majority of that documentary is indeed Fright Night. So included on this disc, and I believe it actually was on the previous Sony disc as well, the version of that documentary that does have the entire portion of that talks about Fright Night, which is 2.5 hours. It's okay, so you don't have the final hour of the documentary that again does cover Fright Night 2 and the remake. I think that comes down to rights issues probably for that. But again, considering this is a release just for the first film, I think it's fine. Again, 2.5 hours of it, and it's just I don't know what else you could even want in this release. So I know I'm kind of gushing over this, but again, it's one of my favorite films. It's one I've waited for a long time to get a proper 4K release. So I'm so happy. Again, very very minor qualms as far as like, maybe there should have been a little bit more blue in the video. And again, that little thing with the song in the audio, and at least in the Atmos track. Outside of those two things, I mean, I literally have to say this is practically a perfect release, and one I'm so happy to have. Definitely comes with a huge recommendation for me. So if I had to give it a grade, I'd probably do, let's see, probably for the video, I would do like a 4.5 out of 5. And then for the audio, probably 4.5 out of 5 as well. If the song issue in the Dolby Atmos track wasn't there, it would easily get a 5 without a doubt. And the extras, honestly, like, again, I don't know what else you could want. So for me, I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 5. So technically, because of the score to the video and audio, I should probably give this a 4.5, but I can't take away my own personal love of the film and how much I absolutely just, oh God, so happy to have this. So this is actually going to get a full 5 out of 5 for me as far as a recommendation goes. And this is definitely going to be in one of my favorite releases of the year. At the end of the year, when I kind of look back and look over some of our releases, this is for sure going to be in the top 10 for sure. So again, enough gushing for me. Those are obviously my thoughts. I'm sure a lot of you probably aren't surprised, you know. But at the same time, you know, I like to think I'm at least being fair to some of the technical aspects. So if you've gotten the release and if you watched it, definitely let me know your thoughts. If you have any questions about it, definitely let me know, and I'll try and answer them as best I can. And as always, thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.